I don't need it. I don't need it. I definitely don't need it. I 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 need it!
Megaman, Megaman, Megaman. What do I have to say about you? You've been going on all the way back on the NES and have quickly become one of my favorite platformers. I know I sort of dropped out of interest for your series for a bit, but your games are some of the most fun I've ever had with a platformer. Well, not exactly your games. Mega Man has had many sub-series over the years. There's Classic, X, Battle Network, Star Force, Legends. Good God, how many of these are there exactly? Oh, that's all of them? Okay. I've only ever played the Classic, some of X, and my favorite of the bunch, the Mega Man Zero series. Mega Man Zero 3 has become one of my favorite games of all time. I'm on the final level of Zero 4 right now, and I'm a big fan of the series' spiritual successor, Azure Striker Gunvolt. But I'll admit I'm not a big fan of the first Zero game. At least when I first tried it. Since I've played 3, I might as well go back to the first one to see whether or not I was too harsh on it. I'll be playing this on the Mega Man Zero/ZX Legacy Collection on Switch. Now, let's rock! So, let's start with the premise. 100 years after the events of the Mega Man X series, you see a girl, some weird fairy creature, and some soldiers running from a bunch of X-like robots before most of the soldiers get wiped out by massive enemy golems. Wait, does that sound like the Roblox death sound to anyone else? Give me a second. Nope, definitely Roblox. Anyways, the girl fairy and one of the soldiers come to a massive door, where on the other side they find a redesigned Zero. After the X-Robots catch up to the trio, the fairy tells the girl to use its power, which allows them to awaken Zero, who is suffering from some memory loss. Convenient! With Zero's help, they blast their way towards the teleporter, where they are assaulted by a golem, with Zero's buster shots doing little damage. Until suddenly, the monitor in the room pops on with a mysterious voice who gives Zero his Z-Saber, which he uses to quickly dispatch the golem and escape with the girl. Afterwards, the girl introduces herself as Seal, I think that's how you say it, who explains that they are the Resistance. You see, X, from Mega Man X, has gone a little crazy and is killing any Reploid remotely suspected of being Maverick. Oh, I'm sorry, I mean retire. Can't use the word kill or die at a kid's game. Anyway, Zero agrees to help, and we're off to the races. Graphically, this game looks great. You can argue the default filter of the Legacy Collection makes it look a little blurry, but that really isn't an issue for me outside of maybe Zero himself. The locations are highly varied and are all interesting to look at, well, except for the desert, but that's because, well, it's a desert. What's also interesting is that outside of the missions, the game has a bit of an open world, as once you've completed all the missions in an area, you can travel there from the Resistance base and can warp to them using the trans servers. On one hand, I think this is pretty cool that all the locations are interconnected, but on the other hand, it really doesn't serve any purpose outside of just being a cool novelty, as it never really means anything outside of grinding for E-crystals and later health once you get sub-tanks. To be frank, I think they only did this to show off the fact that they could, as it serves no real gameplay purpose because you just warp to the location you need to be in when you start a mission. There's a reason that the later games in the Zero series, at least 3 and 4, would drop this structure. Well, at least until ZX, but that's a whole nother beast. Also, I haven't finished that game yet, so I don't really have an opinion. The music as well, it's absolutely amazing. Sure, it has the standard GBA crust to it, but I honestly find it kinda charming in this case. Either that or the Legacy Collection clears it up a bit, but what do I know. My favorite tracks being X the Legend and The End of Legend. Yes, I know that The End of Legend is a remix of X the Legend, I just really like that song. At first glance, Mega Man Zero plays a lot like Mega Man X. You move with your left movement device of choice, jump with the A button, and attack with the B button, and you can dash by either pressing the L button or double tapping a direction, and of course, who can forget the classically broken wall jump. This game controls beautifully. There was never a moment where I felt that I wasn't in control of Zero, and the remapping of the dash to the L button was a brilliant move. So much better than having it mapped to one of the face buttons, or having to double tap the movement device in a direction. Of course, you could still do the second one, but pressing the L button is so much more convenient. I know this was probably done because of the GBA's limited buttons, but I'd like to think this was done because it's a lot more efficient for the movement. So what's the difference between this and X outside of the controls? Well, that comes from the mission structure and weapons. Let's just start with the weapons. Just like Mega Man X, Zero has access to his Buster, which is now just a blaster, and his Z-Saber, which works exactly how you expect them to, as well as some new weapons which are the Tri-Rod, which can attack in any direction, and the Shield Boomerang, which can be thrown by charging it up and can reflect projectiles. I don't have much to say about those last two, as I stuck with the Saber and Buster throughout most of my two playthroughs. I only used the Tri-Rod to get footage of it, and only really used the Shield Boomerang in one level, which I thought it was pretty useful in. Doesn't mean they aren't useful or anything, I just didn't use them much. When you open the pause menu, you can set both a primary weapon and a secondary weapon, which can be used by holding R while attacking. You can also charge up all the attacks when you unlock that ability to do so. Let me explain. You see, in this game, all the weapons have an invisible EXP bar, which will level up your weapons. Where do I start? Well, I don't mind this system too much, except for the Z-Saber, which can't even do more than one slash at a time without leveling up. Once everything's leveled up, it's an absolute blast, but getting to that point is a pain, as there's no way to tell how close you are to leveling up the skill. So it's almost random when it happens, or at least it seems that way. I understand it likely comes from the plot reason that Zero doesn't remember much, but still annoying nonetheless. Instead of boss weapons, depending on the level, you will receive either a chip or a cyber elf. The chips allow you to add elemental properties to your charged attacks, which can be used to hit bosses for their weaknesses. Yeah, there's no special weapons in this game, which is pretty weird considering that's part of what this series is known for. But I like the chip system since I vastly prefer the Saber to most of the special weapons in the series anyways. Now, onto cyber elves, which are given as a reward for completing missions or can be found throughout the levels or by defeating enemies, and can be equipped at train servers. They're essentially your items. What do? Pretty much whatever the game says so. They heal you, give you sub-tanks, ascend your health, let you climb walls, slow your descent on a wall, save you from pits, reduce a boss's health. The only thing they don't do is make you a sandwich. So you're probably wondering why I don't have footage of most of these in action. Well, that's because I didn't really use them for the most part, as they decrease your rank, well that and my general aversion to using limited resources. Blame games like Persona for that. You can equip and upgrade them at train servers, which is extremely confusing to me because why can't I just use these whenever I want? Why do I need to equip them before use? Having to upgrade them with E-crystals I understand, especially with how strong some of these abilities are, but the arbitrary limit as to how many I can have available for use at one time is extremely confusing. Thankfully, later games in the Zero series would fix this. So why care about rank? You see, if you finish a mission with a rank of A or higher, you get an EX skill. I'd show these off, but I'm not good enough at this game to get them. Yeah. So I've brought up missions a lot, so let's talk about them. They can be summed up as your standard Mega Man levels, but these are pretty easy by Mega Man standards and come across more like short bite-sized little romps, where you can challenge yourself to beat it as fast as possible. Which makes sense as this is a GBA game. Nowhere is this more obvious than with desert missions, where 90% of the stage is just walking forward and dealing with hordes of enemies. To be honest, I never really found Mega Man stages difficult to begin with, but, you know, I always had more problems with the bosses. Now on to what these missions are. Each area, excluding the final areas, all have 2 missions taking place in that level. one where you just try to get through the stage, and one where there's a special condition or a change in the stage. With the first mission ending with a random Neo Arcadia member or a device, and the second run ending with one of the 4 Guardians of X: Hyporia, Phantom, Fafnir, and Leviathan. The Neo Arcadia members are pretty easy, barring the damn elephant, once you know their weaknesses. These bosses do have some dialogue which gives them some personality. It is worth noting that the Guardians have a lot more for obvious reasons. The one that stands out the most for me being Leviathan is mostly because she gives more of a playful vibe compared to Phantom and Hyporia's seriousness and Fafnir's battle hunger. Then again, maybe this is the Hazama fan in me shining through.
Right, huh? Unfortunately, I have way too many irons in the old fire to call it a day now.
What? I like villains who play with their food. These fights are much more challenging, particularly Phantom, who I'm convinced doesn't have a weakness. Although weaknesses skill gimp the rest fairly easily. That and basic pattern reading, but that's a given. At least on the boss rush. The mission's objectives are pretty varied, despite all of them ending with a boss. What I mean is the story context for all of them is pretty interesting, even if they're all some form of run-through platforming challenge. I overall enjoyed them, even if it required you to run through most of the levels twice, except for the Protect Factory mission. That one can fuck right off. Let me explain. First, the mission starts off with a boss fight, the only case in the entire game against Phantom, which is an absolute pain. But then, you have to disable bombs. At least I think you do. That wouldn't be a problem if this wasn't the most dangerous area in the game, with there being a massive bottomless pit under you for most of the level. Made even worse, due to some of the bomb's locations there being downright leaps of faith. Curse you, Screen Crunch! On the bright side, there's an extremely easy infinite retries exploit here. Still didn't stop me from unironically screaming profanities at the top of my lungs. Thank God the house was empty. Another mission that annoyed me was stop the hacking, but that was more of me being an idiot and not realizing there was a second sub than anything else. Although I'd say the only other mission that's particularly difficult is Neo Arcadia, because that might as well be summed up as spikes the level. Right, should probably explain retries. They're lives, except they don't refill when you run out. Not a big deal, right? What's that? Yes it is? Oh, I 100% agree. This was the reason why I didn't really like this game the first time I played it. Because it goes against every other life-based game for no good reason. In case you don't understand what I meant, when you retry, it's gone forever. There's no continues in this game. Run out of retries and you are forced to return to your last save point. So unless you're playing your hand smart and you have a stable way to replenish them, for example the Protect Factory mission, you're holding on to all of them until the final boss, meaning every time you die, you're starting from the very beginning of the level, which is such a pain in the ass. Although once again the levels are pretty short outside Neo Arcadia Shrine and Neo Arcadia Core, both of these having multiple boss fights. Shrine in particular stands out as possibly the longest level in the game, and includes those oh so lovely vanishing blocks, although they aren't really that bad in this game. Oh right, make sure you don't press give up or use the escape mission, or else that mission is gone forever. And if you fail enough of them without reloading, the final section of the game kicks in, and you lose access to a ton of Cyber Elves and chips. In all honesty, purposely failing missions must make this game an interesting speedrun, even if it's a bit silly. So, my overall thoughts after playing it completely though? I really liked it. Sure, there's a ton of weird quirks that confuse me to this very day. The retries in particular baffle me beyond belief, but the gameplay's fun, the story's enjoyable despite how basic it is, and the levels are short enough for it not to be a complete nightmare to have to constantly start over. All the quirks are something you just kinda get used to, and outside of those quirks, it's great. How much I enjoy this game was really hammered home when I did a second full playthrough recently on Twitch with some friends, and yeah, it was a great time. So, I can recommend this game. But once again, I will not deny that it has some really rough edges, and that it's probably one of the worst in the Zero series. So, just be warned. So, what to do next? Zero does have a spiritual successor. I'm definitely going to have to cover that at some point. See you guys next time.